I'm Stephanie, and this is Snowdome of the Day. Today's Snowdome is a popsicle-shaped dome featuring a lighthouse ring toss game from San Diego. I've been looking around, and I'm not sure that there is a San Diego lighthouse painted this way at the present time, but there are plenty of lighthouses in San Diego, and this lighthouse certainly looks like a lighthouse and might remind somebody of a trip to San Diego. Lighthouses, they're not so much a beacon as a warning. The purpose of the lighthouse is to illuminate a spot that is dangerous so that we don't come so close that we have a shipwreck. So in that way, I think it's interesting that the light is something that we want to see as a warning, but not as a beckoning. Like the Seattle Space Needle, which we featured recently, the top of the lighthouse gives us a different perspective. A lighthouse, by its nature, gives us a perspective of both land and sea. It's a coming together of two very different forms of the earth. One side we see the waters, the other side, where the lighthouse is planted, is the earth. Often, those boundaries have between them that in-between space, perhaps rocks or sand. If you didn't have the lighthouse there, you'd still know you were in between the two. You'd be able to observe the water and the earth coming together. And as you walked along the way, your feet might touch something different than soil or water when you reached those rocks or that sand. Today, we're at the beginning of September, a time of year that we're in between summer and fall. We see the tomatoes, they're very important in my life, ripening, and yet as we have cooler nights, those tomatoes will slow down in that ripening process. And yet we have the capacity for very, very bright sun here in Nebraska. I looked at the forecast for this weekend, and there's one day with an expected high of 101 degrees. Just 2 days later, an expected low of 47 degrees. That's a recipe for sinus headaches for some of us. But it's also a reminder of changes. Changes in the weather, changes in the season, changes in our lives. Some of which are sudden and observable, some of which are more subtle. It's helpful to have guideposts along the way. Some of that might be a lighthouse. Sometimes it's a friend who tells us a story, or reminds us how far we've come. Today, a friend reminded me, we are strong. We are strong in our faith. We are strong in our will, and we are strong in our quest for justice. That was a reminder of strength in the midst of changing times. As a people of faith, we are reminded to look for signs along the way, those transitional points. We are reminded to have a view of the world that is driven by God's vision for us, not just what we can see with our own eyes. I give thanks for the beacons, for the warnings, for the light, for the changing seasons, for the opportunity to see things in new ways. I give thanks for you and offer prayers for all of us in this changing season.